It's once again time for Movie Spotlight, our weekly dive into the world of Korean cinema and reviews of the latest cinematic releases at the Korean box office and online. And we do that, of course, with the help of our panel of critics. Joining us today, first, we have Jason Bechervaise. Jason, hello, it's good to see you.
Hello, Jang-ho, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Happy Friday. And we have Darcy Paquet with us as well. Darcy, hello to you too.
Hi, happy to be here.
Okay, 2 local releases again this week, which is what we like. Today we start with a new feature film financed and released by the streaming giant Netflix. It's called Jeong-i in both Korean and English, but with the letter E in English. It's a science fiction thriller by Yeon Sang-ho, who is the director of Train to Busan and the series Hellbound as well. It debuted this week as Netflix's most watched non-English language film across the world. Jason, can you introduce it for us?
Yeah, this is the latest in kind of Netflix dystopian fare. It's set in the 22nd century. It's in a time, where much of humanity has relocated to shelters kind of orbiting around the Earth due to destruction, brought on by, guess what? Climate change. And so a civil war has been taking place for decades, and many believe that the only thing that can really end this war is technology, artificial intelligence. And the film focuses essentially on a small team of researchers trying to recreate humanity's greatest warrior or soldier. It's a woman called Jeong-i. She failed in her first mission, and so they've got this this experiment essentially to try and kind of bring her back to life. And in a twist that's actually revealed quite early on, the researcher leading this effort is none other than Jeong-i's own daughter, rather, who's now grown into an adult.
Okay, so themes relating to artificial intelligence, environmental destruction, and future forms of warfare. Darcy, all fairly familiar items, we would say, ideas that have been explored in Hollywood films before, for decades even, dating back to Blade Runner and beyond. But when it comes to, I guess, a familiar setup, I guess we're looking to see whether it brings anything new to the table or whether it rehashes those old tropes well. Does Jeong-i do that? Does Jeong-i bring any new ideas to the table?
I've been thinking, trying to come up with something new. No is the short answer. No, there's nothing new. That is one of the ways to judge, science fiction works is, does it have any new ideas? And science fiction is described as a genre of ideas, but I don't envy the task given to screenwriters of science fiction because so many ideas have been explored over the years, and as technology continues to develop, you get slightly different takes on it, but basically there's a limited number of ideas in the world. And so I think the key to science fiction is taking familiar ideas and then presenting it in a way that makes them feel fresh, even if they may not be completely unique or groundbreaking. And I do think that's one thing that the film sort of failed to do here, that it does feel quite familiar, both in terms of the the visuals and the way that the ideas are presented. And, it's not that the ideas themselves aren't thought-provoking in themselves, but yeah, if you've seen a lot of science fiction already, then you'll kind of be nodding your head.
Right, so overall, it's a disappointing watch then.
Yes, for me it was. It's been really interesting to see the reaction to this because there are defenders of this film. Certainly in terms of special effects, I think that it's impressive that a production that, despite being financed by Netflix, was, produced in Korea. It is on a big scale, and it looks quite impressive in a lot of different ways. To me, I had a hard time really getting into the story. To me, it was a script issue, and not only the fact that it was kind of lacking anything particularly unique in terms of its ideas, but also in terms of storytelling. There's a lot of kind of failed tests that we're watching throughout much of the film, and the story doesn't seem to have a lot of forward momentum. It doesn't seem to be moving really anywhere.
It doesn't go anywhere for an hour, actually. And I think this is part of the problem because to me, it almost felt like the first episode of a series. For the first hour, absolutely. And then for the final 30, 40 minutes, then it kind of really kicks into gear. And it feels, you've got the kind of climatic sequence, the kind of the cathartic, kind of response and all the rest of it. But it just doesn't really gel. And so structurally, there are several issues with the film. And also, I think one of the bigger issues with sci-fi in Korea is that directors love science fiction. They've got a huge appetite for it, but they really struggle to localize it. And this film, there is no reference to Korea in the film whatsoever.
Right.
And I'm not saying that there has to be like all this kind of political intrigue or, delving into social issues. But I think for me, as someone who's just been following Korean cinema for 2 decades now, and I love the way directors are able to kind of bring in the culture, the history, and there is nothing in that regard in this film. And for me, that was kind of quite a shame. And I think it also underscored the difficulties that Korean directors have with science fiction. It's not a genre that really has worked well in Korea. In fact, the only successful films are by Bong Joon-ho,
Sure.
The Host and Snowpiercer.
It is interesting, especially in recent years, Korean cinema has tried to pursue more science fiction films. They've been ambitious, things like Space Sweepers as well a couple of years ago, but they've all been rather disappointing. There is one more element about this film that's made headlines. Jason, the role of Chung-hee's grown daughter, is played by Kang Soo-youn, who tragically passed away last year. Does that perhaps change any of the experience of watching the film?
Yes, it did actually, because her character is so kind of, she's somber throughout much of it. She's dealing with, the fact that her mother is this, this warrior, and you've got these experiments going on, and she's also sick as well. So the fact that she, tragically and suddenly passed away, I think just adds, I guess, a layer there that wasn't really there when they made the film. She's a terrific actress. She won the first kind of leading actress award at a major festival in Europe for her role in Surrogate Woman, at the Venice Film Festival. So a huge figure in the industry, and she'll be sadly missed, and she's very much centre here. And it's a shame the film isn't better, because she is actually really good in it.
Sure, it is a sad loss. Darcy, before we move on, a quick word on the director, Yeon Sang-ho. After Train to Busan, it seems like his subsequent works have failed up to live to that standard he set with that film.
He's a director with a really interesting career, because he began his career making low-budget, independent animation. And we'll talk more about animation in a second. And then unexpectedly, he was given the opportunity to direct this blockbuster-scale film, Train to Busan. And he did an incredibly good job with it. And I'm still a little baffled by that, because, the skills that you need to make an animated film are completely different from the skills you need to make a big budget zombie spectacular. But he did that so well. But there is something, I think in terms of his storytelling and his, there's something very kind of minor about his taste. And I'm not saying that as a criticism in any way. But it always kind of struck me that either you give him kind of a smaller scale project where he can kind of give full rein to his, particular vision, and it is a very dark kind of perspective that he has on the world. Or perhaps you give him a bigger project that maybe is written by another screenwriter, but, then he takes that and turns it into a blockbuster project. And, here too, I think he handles the action sequences well. He handles the scale of the film. And that's really hard to do. There are few directors who can handle that, but I think there is a script problem.
Okay, well, that was our review of Chung-hee, which is available to watch now on Netflix. Let's continue on to our second film. It's a stop-motion animated movie from Korean director Park Jae-beom. It's called Motherland. The title in Korean is 엄마의 땅, 그리샤의 숲의 주인. It premiered at the Busan International Film Festival last fall, and it also received a special mention from the Seoul Independent Film Festival. Darcy, can you tell us more about this film?
Yes, the director Park Jae-beom has been specializing in stop-motion animation. He's made a number of short films in recent years. And so this is his feature debut. It was produced by one of Korea's top film schools, the Korean Academy of Film Art. And it's interesting in that the main characters in the film are not Korean. It's set in this tundra region of Siberia in the 20th century. The family at the center of the story are these nomadic kind of reindeer breeders who live a very traditional lifestyle. And then the mother falls ill. The father leaves for the city to get medicine for her, but their daughter, who has kind of a particular spiritual energy about her, she has this vision of a mythical bear that, is known as the master of the forest. And a shaman tells her that this bear knows ways to heal people and ways to stop suffering. So she decides to set off and to find this master, this bear, and to hopefully heal her mother. So she intends to go alone, but her little brother kind of stashes himself along, as little brothers sometimes do.
Okay, so Jason, it sounds like quite an unusual, ethereal film with its Siberian historical setting and spiritual themes. What do you think of it?
Yeah, no, it's pretty good. I watched it in Busan last year. I watched it on my computer, unfortunately. I wish I watched it on the big screen, because visually, it's a really interesting movie. It was basically created with stop motion puppets and then enhanced with CGI. And it's very snowy and it's very, very colourful. The story is a little bit, it's simple. There's not really much depth to it, but it's only I think an hour and 10 minutes. It kind of goes by at a pretty brisk pace, so structurally it's pretty sound, visually it's good, and yeah, it's a charming film. I wouldn't say it was my favourite film I saw in Busan last year, but I do think it was an interesting movie coming out of CAFA. They don't normally make animations, so it's normally live action movies that they produce. So lots of talent coming out of these schools, and clearly that's evident here as well. Right,
charming, but I feel like it didn't really touch you, should I say?
No, I guess it wasn't a film that I didn't connect with in a really kind of powerful way, and that may be just down to the nature of the animation more than anything else. I other than the story and the fact that it lacked lots of layers, I don't think there's much I can really criticize about the film. But I didn't connect with it in a really powerful way, and nor did I expect to, but that's not to say that others won't.
Darcy, what about you?
Yeah, I think that, it's one of those films that may be affected partly by how you view it as well, because seeing it as part of a film festival where there are all these other Korean films making their premiere, and this film, it's really kind of targeted at a different sort of market. And it's interesting because it's the kind of film that children can certainly watch and enjoy, and there's nothing, scary about the film, and it's, the main characters are children. So in that sense, it's, you can call it a children's film. Although I think it's the sort of film that adults might enjoy a little bit more than children, because it's really hard, as a parent, I know this, it's really hard to tell a story that really grabs kids, and, Disney's good at it and Pixar's good at it. But,
sure.
But it is, I think that I was really impressed with the visuals of the film. I liked the story of it. It did kind of pull me into its, world as I was watching it. And, Korean cinema has never produced anything like this before. So in that sense, I do want to support the film and encourage people to see it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's lots to like about the film, even though I didn't necessarily love it. But it's good. It's a good film.
Okay, so once again, that's Motherland. It's out now in Korean cinemas. And lastly, this week, the nominations for the 95th Academy Awards were announced. And Asian American talent were well represented, especially with Everything Everywhere All at Once receiving the highest number of nominations. But Jason, fans for Korean cinemas were feeling a bit disappointed, right?
Shocked, actually. I'm not sure disappointed is the right adjective. Shocked. I literally was watching it on my iPad, and I was ready to take the image of Decision to Leave, and it was like, where's Decision to Leave? There is the film has not been nominated. And yeah, no, it was a real surprise. And I was kind of trying to work out what had happened. Maybe just the film didn't connect with Academy members like it has done, with the BAFTA members to such an extent. There, actually, he was Park Chan-wook was nominated for Best Director. And I do wonder whether Park Chan-wook is more admired in the UK than he is in the US. But, I think the awards circuit, the awards race is a very complex beast.
Right.
And it's all about momentum. And there was no doubt that, after the fall festivals, that it had lost a bit of momentum, whereas that's where Parasite kind of snowballed. And you have to be, working the room, and Park Chan-wook's busy with his new series, Sympathizer. He's shooting that in the United States with Robert Downey Jr. And, Bong Joon-ho had to invest a huge amount of time just to kind of, get the voters and meet the voters and try and convince them. And
he said that he did 600 interviews.
Yeah.
Wow.
During the Oscar campaign, and they call it a campaign for a reason, because it is almost like a political campaign where you have to be out and meeting people and convincing people in person to vote for you.
Yeah, and Bong Joon-ho was not. I'm sure he's working on other projects, but not to the same extent that Park Chan-wook has been doing. In fact, he started shooting his new drama. So, yeah, it's a shame, but what can you do?
Yes, so unfortunately, no nomination for Park Chan-wook's Decision to Leave in the International Feature Film category at the Oscars this year. We can't expect every year, of course, to be an Oscar-winning year for Korean cinema.
Expectations are like,
yes, especially with recent years, yes. But it is still a shame to see Decision to Leave not get that nomination. Okay, we'll wrap it up there. Gentlemen, thank you both for your time, as always, and we'll see you again next time.
Yeah.
Take care.
Have a great weekend.